We should start.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first edition of Culture and Agriculture. So I want to introduce two ideas before jumping into the session. First one being Indian culinary agenda, and then why are we doing this Culture and Agriculture series? So ICA is a small initiative by a small bunch of friends, and all we are trying to do is make a little change in how you think of and approach Indian food. How do you write about Indian food? When we read, what depth are we going into, etc., etc. Very small effort, but if we can make small changes in conversations around Indian food, I think our job will be done. And coming to culture and agriculture, I think it's a part of that larger agenda. That when we think about food, rarely do we think how it's produced, where it comes from, who produces it. Farmers' issues and food are seen as two different poles. So in this series, we will try to somehow bridge that gap between how food is produced and how it's consumed. So the first in the series is dal. And I'll tell you why we chose dal. Last 2 months, I think a lot has happened in dal. Two brands have gone to court claiming who is the inventor of dal makhani. The Indian government has actually launched a portal to procure dal directly from farmers. We have also opened our borders to global countries, saying if you want to export dal to India, you can do that free of cost, right? And then Times of India, in fact, published a report around 2 days back saying moong production over a 5-year period is supposed to decline by 6%, urad dal by 50%, and tur dal by 30%. We'll fact check and go into yearly data, etc. probably if we have the time. But there is a lot happening around dal, and on the consumption side also, we'll also talk about how consumption is changing. And I'm happy, almost lucky to have this panel for the first edition. With us, we have Chef Ashish Bhasin. As we were discussing yesterday, he's not a celebrity chef, but he's a much celebrated chef. The chef who actually spends most of his time in the kitchen, whose food we have consumed time and again, and who has spent over 25 years at kitchens in Taj, Leela, Oberoi, etc., and now runs CB Hospitality. Then we have with us Nitin Puri. If you don't know, you should. Earlier, he used to hang around in a small agri-tech group. I know him since he was heading agriculture division at Yes Bank. But now he has a brilliant new brand called KisanSay, which is a direct-to-customer brand, and which tells you about not just where your product comes from, where your dal, rice, spices come from, but they're also co-branding that product with farmer groups. Probably one of the first to put a farmer group logo on the product and telling you and give you that information. Then we have Rushina. Rushina, my teammate at ICA, and also I should not be introducing Rushina at all. I think everybody on the call probably knows her, came because of her. Runs, APB Cook Studio. She's also the brains behind the Godrej Food Trends report. And I remember the COVID years, right? So most of us just could survive the COVID years because she was doing her lives. So she will be talking about the culture and a lot more. And finally, Aline Mukherjee. Again, 2 decades of experience in the most boring sector on this panel, right? So commodities. So yesterday, while we were doing the dry run, we kind of sympathized with Aline that he has the most boring part to cover. He will tell us about numbers and government schemes and how to look at dal, not as a recipe, but also as a commodity. So Aline, my sympathies, but welcome to the panel. So, to start with, as the title says, we'll look at culture and agriculture. And we'll also see how culture impacts agriculture. So to Rushina, to start with you, in short, how do we look at this gigantic universe of dal? In English, it's pulses, legumes, beans. It's an entire universe. So how do we deconstruct or simplify that in the Indian context? Right?
So essentially, I think what I feel that dal doesn't get its due for considering the huge space it holds in the Indian diet. If you look at, so I spent a considerable, I think about 2 years studying and documenting dal consumption. I'm sure that you guys are all going to give me lots of insights on other aspects of it. But what I have done is chronicle how dal is used. India uses more dal and consumes more dal than any other culinary culture in the world. When I say India, I think it should expand in a sense to the South Asian subcontinent. Okay. But in terms of kinds of dal, the grain, when I say dal, the grain, I encompass within that umbrella legumes, lentils, pulses. Dal, the dish, which is the soupy dish that we eat on a daily basis, and dal as an ingredient that is used in various different snacks, batters, idli, dosa, all of that stuff. We eat more dal in more ways, more frequently than any other culinary culture. This has evolved because of, essentially, it goes back to the root of the evolution of Indian cuisine. Because of the unique location that India has, with the Himalayas creating a barrier and the unique ecosystem we have, the unique climate conditions that we have, Indian culinary culture has evolved. The Indian diet has evolved to be one based on cereal pulse. We eat more plant-based food again than any other culinary culture. So we draw all our nutrient groups from plants mostly, except for when meat, seafood comes on the plate, and except for when we use ghee. Everything from the grain we eat, the breads we make, the vegetables we eat, the dal we eat, the cooking mediums, which are oil mostly, everything comes from plants. With different cuisines, the culture, the culinary culture, the ethos of a cuisine is built on what the land and the sea give us. So where there is more meat, you will see a more meat-based diet. Where there is more seafood on in coastal regions, you'll see more seafood on the plate. With plants being our richest resource, our diet has evolved to be a plant-based one. So we draw our carbohydrates, proteins, and all the macronutrients from plant-based foods as well. This is also a result of our agricultural practices. So we basically, somewhere along the way, as agriculture evolved, we realized that cereal-based plants deplete the soil of nutrients. So we started intercropping dal or legume-based plants, because legumes return nitrogen to the soil, enrich it again. So you'll see across India, there is a alternating cropping system between cereal-based plants like millet, wheat, rice, and pulses of some sort or the other. Before we had refrigeration, modern technology, and science, we ate what the land gave us. Across the country, we have different pulses that were grown that came onto the plate. So we eat dal across the country in different forms, in different frequencies, perhaps. Like in the Northeast, maybe we'll eat less dal. But across the most of India, from the north down to south, across the west and the western coast, dal is very prevalent, at least once a day. Even meat-eating cultures, even meat-eating cuisines will have dal on the plate in some form or the other, at least once in a while, if not every day. But it is prevalent on the plate across the region. What forms we eat in it, what ways we cook it changes as you travel around. again goes back to the land and the climate. So if you ask me the consumption practices, it changes based on climate. So if you look at the northern Himalayas, across the northern Himalayas, we'll see that we are eating whole grains, like your sabut dal jo bolte hain, rajma, urad, akha moong. Akha masoor has become prevalent in recent years. It wasn't traditional, but these are eaten in their whole form. Then as you move down, as the terrain changes and the climate changes, you find, depending on where you are, it's a mix between whole pulses in the winter and split, and de-skinned, split, halved, with skin on, without skin on. All those permutations and combinations start happening as you move down and the climate gets warmer. The warmer the climate gets, the lighter the dals get. So as you go towards the western region and south, you find that whole pulses go almost off the menu unless it's in the cold season or the rainy season. You'll end up seeing a lot of split moong, split tur. Tur is across western and southern regions. And then as you head up again towards the east on this side, you see it's a blend of urad, moong, white matar in Bengal, if I'm not mistaken. And then as you go northeast again, it becomes very few, like soya bean and urad. But how they are treated changes because it's more tropical. So another interesting thing that has happened with Indian culinary culture is we've harnessed energy. Where we had sun, we dried things. Where we had humidity, we fermented things. And therefore, in the Northeast, you see a lot of dal or legume-based condiments made from fermented beans. Largely, it's soya bean, but I think some other beans also get used in some places. So that's essentially our dal eating habit or our dal eating tradition comes from the fact that this is what the land has given us. This is what the climate drives. It also, with modern science coming into the picture now, it's also been, we are learning that a lot of these traditions come with a base of science. So eating dal and rice or cereal and pulse, so whether it's millet, wheat, rice and pulses together in a primarily vegetarian diet or a largely vegetarian diet gives us a full amino acid profile. Because if you eat rice or dal in isolation, you don't get a complete amino acid profile like animal protein would give you. But when you eat dal and rice together, you do get, of course, this is not in isolation. It also takes into account all the other factors that would be on a plate, like your souring agents, your spices, and all the functional benefits they will bring to make whatever you're eating more bioavailable. But essentially, our entire culinary culture is sitting on the combination of cereal and pulse.
Thank you, Rushina. I think that's the perfect context to base our future arguments and discussions on. Coming next to Aline, I think yesterday we were discussing that how culture impacts agriculture, and Rushina, thanks for covering the basic culture aspect. But Aline, I mean, the things that I want to ask is recently, I think as normal consumers, we see that the prices of a few dals vary or fluctuate a lot, right? Over the last few months, we have also seen how most of our tur dal imports are coming from either Mozambique, Malawi, or Myanmar. The prices are now touching 250 rupees a kilo. So I'll come back to Rushina to talk about why are we consuming so much tur dal. But Aline, I mean, how do we look at dal as a commodity and a commodity that is globally traded? Where does India lie? Are we consuming too much of one, less of other? Like, how does that impact the farmers and the value chain? Anything you can cover regarding that?
Yes, thanks, Om. And really, after hearing Ruchina, it's what I'm going to say is definitely going to be boring. There's such a interesting aspects from the food side of it. So you have really made my time tougher. But one connecting fact which she also mentioned, I will pick up the little bit of thread from there to respond to your query. Agroclimatical conditions also impact the production aspects, right, amongst various others. So one of the major challenge with pulses are, we do not have many hybrid seeds, actually almost none. So productivity definitely creates a challenge. So I mean, to talk about statistics, on an average, we are maybe 1 ton per hectare, less than 1 ton per hectare as a productivity aspect. But if you compare that with any other cereal crop which has got a reasonable amount of higher production, government prices, the economic incentive for the farmers to grow those crops become very, very high. So automatically that creates a challenge in the production ecosystem. But remember, some year back we had to go out to African countries, even the PM went out and requested a lot of other countries to supply. And a few dals actually reached pretty high at that point, almost lifetime high prices. From there, I mean, if we pick up figures from that time frame, we see that almost maybe 17, 18 million tons from production. Today, within that 10 years time horizon, we have gone to almost 25, 26 million tons. So production definitely has gone up, right? Overall pulse aspect. So that is a very important to note, because if you look at the growth pattern, it's more than 10.5% of pulse growth. So one would definitely question that how did it happen? Which is such a short span of time. So something must have been done right, that seed packets, government pushing the farmers to grow, higher MSP prices so that farmers have the market side of it. So those things did happen. So today we are, I think, maybe around 2-3 million shortage in terms of our consumption. And technically, I mean, on a ballpark figure, per capita, approximately 8 to 10 kg per annum is the consumption of our pulses in India. And within that, two are the major ones, as we know, the chana and the tur, that is background. And definitely then the moong beans, both of the moong, the masoor comes into the play. So the import, if you look at the overall basket, is actually not huge in that sense. But as Ruchina mentioned, it is ingrained in your culture to have dal, at least in one sitting. So that definitely aligns to our consumption pattern. Now, when we talk about commodity, as we produce, first we need to understand then what is commodity per se. Why do we say it's a commodity before it transcends into a very unique product, which, let's say, Nitin is trying to do and the chef is trying to put on the table? It doesn't have any distinctive aspects, as it gets produced in the field. And that's one of the biggest reasons that we feel as a consumer, everything is same. But to give you an example of tur, the geospecific regions of produce, right? There is a red tur in Gulbarga region, it fetches the highest price. MP, there are area where there is a black gram, which is very small in size, but produces one of the most nutritious and delicious chana. So it's also very geographical specific once it gets into the uniqueness. That could be a soil condition, that could be growing condition, that could be its variety. So those aspects are definitely taken into consideration, which common people like us may not deep dive too much. The other important aspect from a commodity, the trade part of it, right? So there is even if, let's say, we are importing a couple of million, 3-4 million tons, in USD term, it's almost $2.5 to $3 billion. So look at the amount of money which is riding on this particular trade. So definitely the policies, the ecosystem, uh, also needs to be taken into account when we look at that how production ecosystem can be developed. So uh, the few challenges which you asked, I mean, why we are importing by genetics, most of the pulses do not have, as I mentioned, hybrid because of the genetic makeup. So it's very difficult to create a hybrid. So what happens, what concerns because of that is uh, you have farmer shared seeds, right? So let's say in a few of the areas you have some uh, conditions, weather conditions, which did not have produced a good quality seed. So for the next season planting, if you do not have the right quality seed, is going to impact the yield. So
Yeah.
those kind of small challenges also come into the play. So I'm sure government is doing its work. Scientists are working on hybridization of, but interestingly, not many private companies are working on it. It's the government which is working. But if you look at just to before I pause, uh, the varietal aspects plays a humongous amount of role in the prices. You talked about 250 rupees kg for tour, but if you let's say we are all are in Delhi, I guess, and if you go to Kharibawdi, you will see that in Chandni Chowk, the one of the largest spice and pulses cereal market, wholesale market. There are almost 17 types, 17 to 18 types of chana, that is black gram, which is out there, and the price ranges from almost the difference between the top and the low is almost 10 to 15 rupees. So one would ask why, right? So the quality and those kind of things also matter, the varietal aspects. So, uh, so it becomes a very complex issue in terms of price factor. But media always reports on one that but it takes the maximum price, but that may not be always the case. So I think I'll take a pause here. Come back. I mean, there are for pulses, you can take up each pulse and can talk for 1 month.
Yeah.
It will still won't cover.
I think, coming back to government support in production, I think I was looking at data between 2013-14 and 21-22. And it says the MSP for tur and urad dal has increased by 46.5%. Moong has increased by 61%. And for chana, it has increased by 68%. Masoor 86%. That's almost double, right? So that's the MSP increase in across the whole all the different kinds of dal. But we'll kind of see if we can save time and come back to these issues again. What we want to do is save 20 minutes at the end for a wider discussion. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. But anyway, we'll have around 15 minutes in the end where we will bring in the attendees to ask questions. But coming to you, Chef, what we talked about the production issues, the shortfall in FU, market variability, etc. Also, but when we look at consumption trends, Rushina talked about the private consumption, but if we look at commercial kitchens, there are very definite patterns that you see in across hotels and restaurants, no matter which region, which geography you are in. As diverse as the houses are, the commercial kitchens don't reflect that diversity. I think all of us can probably take guesses, but why is that the case? I mean, is there a business opportunity in serving more kinds of dal? Is there room for innovation in commercializing dal inside kitchens and turning that into a new trend if we can?
Thanks, Om. It's a very important topic, and I go back a few years back where me and Rushina had done a dal festival, and I still remember doing that video with Rushina. So she does this beautiful days, and it was a dal devas. So we all want to do that. It's not that chefs don't want to do that, or it's a challenge with the creativity, or it's the challenge with cooking more dals. But the thing is, when we are in the professional kitchen, when I'm working for a hotel, I'm in hospitality business and not in hospitality service.
Yeah.
So most of the decisions are not taken because of my passion or my creativity, but it's also because of the financial controller and the bottom line, which is a difference between a profit and the losses. Now, if I have 10 different kind of dal, then I need to have preparation of 10 different dals. The wastage would be on each and every dal because it's not what you produce, it's consumed. So you figure out and you pick up your favorite battles or your favorite choices which you think will do well. Uh, a person on a table will order one dal. So if there are four, five of us, we will order one dal and the make different kind of vegetable meats or whatever is there. So then we have to take that conscious call that which will be that dal. And unfortunately or fortunately, whatever is there, the decision is never a tough one here because it's straightforward either a dal makhani or a derivative of dal makhani, dal maharani, or hotels put it on their name that dal XYZ hotel, that's why, but it remains that black dal. So that's one. The second, yellow dal tadka, lighter option, it remains there. And then it comes to the regional ones where, like, for example, if I'm doing a Rajasthani food, so then the dal panchmel will come in or those kind of thing. But
Mhm.
it's always a conscious financial decision, I would say that.
Hmm. So, okay, so we'll kind of come back to this again on what needs to change, who needs to change that, and how will that, what role do players like us have in that? But, Nitin, probably you chose the most difficult task uh, amongst all of us at this table. Uh, my question is, does the Indian consumer care where his dal comes from? Uh, or are we still buying the cheapest that is available first? Uh, and also, if you can cover the aspect of how do you, now that you have a business to run, how do you segmentize that customer? Do you look at hotels and restaurants as, uh, you know, do you see them as a business channel, not just pushing the dal variety, but also pushing dal recipes, etc.? So, how do you segment your market, and what opportunities and
Sure.
challenges do you see?
Sure. Om. So, see, fundamentally, the taste, the quality, the nutrition, the cookability, the cooking characteristics of any food product and dal as well, essentially depends on where it grows, the soil that it comes from, the agroclimatic conditions where it is produced. So that's of course a fact, because any food product can obviously be grown anywhere, but to grow it the best way so that it meets a certain functional requirement of the consumer, it has to come, definitely from a certain place. I give you the example of rajma, right? Rushina was mentioning rajma is also one of these, under the category of dals. Now, for a rajma, for a person who's cooking it, of course, it has to cook well and taste well, number one. Number two, do you need to soak it overnight? Or is it possible that you have a rajma that you just need to soak maybe for half an hour or 1 hour? When you're cooking it, can you have a rajma which cooks in half an hour and 4 or 5 whistles of the pressure cooker versus cooking it for over an hour when most of the nutrition goes away for such a long duration and over 8 or 10 whistles? And after cooking, is it good in terms of the way it looks, or is it half cooked, semi-cooked, half not cooked? Maybe not good in texture, maybe slightly slimy, and not so great in terms of the way it feels. So the entire experience of a consumer, right from the time you're preparing it to the time you're cooking it to the time you're consuming it, obviously is a matter of consideration. It may not come out in as many words as I described it, but discreetly, a consumer, the lady of the house, the person who's cooking it, and the people who are consuming it, eating it, would definitely think of it. Now, if you need a better product, superior product, which cooks better, which tastes better, and from a nutrition point of view also it could be superior, you obviously need a particular product coming from a particular place. So here then comes the equation of what you were referring to and what chef was also referring to, and I think Rushina also mentioned that as to what is the difference between the business of food and the culture of food. Obviously, if you need a better rajma coming from the Himalayas versus an imported Burmese or other origin-based rajma, obviously there is a difference functionally, but obviously it would also come at a price. Now, how many people would be ready to pay that price premium? If that price premium is say 10%, 20%, maybe a certain number would be willing to pay. If it is 50%, 100%, obviously price elasticity of demand works. You'll hardly get any consumers, right? And what has also happened is parallelly, because of the way trade dynamics function globally, it's an open world, duties or no duties, but in this open world today, increasingly a lot of the better products get crowded out, and over a period of time their supply keeps dwindling down, and then that is a vicious cycle, because the moment the farmer is not getting paid remuneratively, or the differential is going down significantly between a cheaper variety and the better variety, over a period of time, it's a multiplicative factor where those good varieties and those good products slowly start getting marginalized. And that also has an implication on the larger ecology when we talk of sustainability and aspects related to SDGs, etc. Right? So it's a full circle in terms of again what Rushina was referring to. Every place has a certain agroclimatic condition, and therefore something grows best in a certain place, it's consumed in a certain place. But now, since all of this happens, a lot of this disruption results in the fact that the price differentials become so large that then people literally stop consuming those products, right? So that's the dynamic. So what we've done is, as KisanSay, what we essentially say is we get you the products direct from source. The consumer knows exactly where the product has come from. And if there is an established provenance, and if there is an established functional benefit of a particular product coming from a particular place, we are there to offer it to you. And then it's a matter of time that, maybe the premium today would be 20% or 25%. As demand keeps increasing, as more and more people get to know of this product, the supply side also gets the signal, the production keeps going on a year-on-year basis, and maybe the price differential then comes down. And then, as Chef was saying, he has to manage his financial controller and accountant. There will come a time when mass commercialization will also happen, right? So that's, it's a complex jigsaw puzzle, but that's what it is.
Thank you, Nitin. So I think we'll probably come back to the farmer aspect later in the second half. How do we incentivize? We have been talking about MSP, etc., but can the market itself incentivize farmers in a more sustainable way, right? So, but we have still, so any questions, please leave them in the chat room or you can raise your hands. But, what I want to talk next is about premiumization. I think almost everyone talked about some kind of a premiumization in some ways. So, Rushina, and all of you feel free to come in. Do we see, you also spoke, offline, we talked about the farm meats and how all of them are being produced by, so that's a whole different value chain when you look at dal and dal produced commodities, right? So do you see that as a premiumization? And I'll also ask the chef, is there a way that modern Indian cuisine also looking to premiumize dal beyond the dal makhani and the kali dal? So anybody, how do we make it more premium, or how do we rebrand a modernized dal?
I think there's two things. One is that this conversation that's happening globally about plant protein, plant-derived meats, somehow is not connecting back to India, which is plant protein driven. All the four meats basically are modernized versions of things like gatta and badi that we already have as traditional foods. When you talk about any of these things, India's already done it, but somehow that conversation doesn't come full circle. So the world doesn't know about our traditional existing practices, the products we make, because we've been making badis, papads, and other products, even snacky things. Like there are places like Kathiawad where even sev and gathia get used as ingredients. And this has been prevalent, through centuries. But these conversations and this knowledge is not available at a global level in a way that the global audiences can understand it and comprehend it. I think that's where people like us come into the picture, where we translate it and we say that, okay, you know, if you have a chickpea tofu, that's a gatta. We already have it in India as well. And we've probably taken it to another level when it comes to the taste and flavor, because the other thing we have is a very, very rich palette of flavors. So that's one aspect that I feel that knowledge needs to become more synergistic. And the other thing is, just like, you know, we have a lot of conversation happening around GI tagging just now. What I've seen and observed with dal, and possibly Nitin and Aline will agree with this, is because we look at it as a commodity, we don't realize that regionally we are so rich in the varieties of dal we have. Even, for example, one of my pet peeves is everybody talks about the Kashmiri Badarwa Rajma as being one of the best. But that's actually because Kashmir came into focus, Kashmiri cuisine came into focus a decade before a place like Uttarakhand has come into focus. Uttarakhand's cuisine and ingredient basket is only now coming into the forefront. We have some 7-8 different types of rajma, and fantastic rajma that grows here as well. But we just didn't know about it. So that labeling of one particular region ka dal being the best is making us perhaps not focus on other places. So when we travel, we should be asking for local dals. We should be asking to taste them. When, as consumers, we change the dialogue around dal, when we ask for it, when the demand grows, then the suppliers, whether it's restaurants, farmers, will start investing more in bringing those things to the plate. Otherwise, a farmer is growing certain varieties. Like I know across Uttarakhand, there are a lot of farmers who grow a separate crop for their own home consumption, which is more varied than what they are growing to sell to market. And that homogenization and commoditization, while it's important from feeding the hungry and from a nutrition perspective, we shouldn't be losing out on the regional variation, the diversity we have in dal. Like udad, Pahadi udad from Uttarakhand, it's completely different in flavor from that commercial udad that you buy in the supermarket. The size of the grain is also double. The commercial one is double. The Pahadi one is chota, but it's so full of flavor. That's why most of our Pahadi dals, there's very little extra spicing. There's no pyaz, tomato ka bhuna masala masking the flavor of the dal. It's the dal with basic tadkas, and that's what fuels most of the Himalayas where dal is consumed. So I think as consumers, just like, you know, we've brought out conversations around millet, around heritage rice, we're looking at the provenance of lots of different ingredients. We need to start looking at the provenance of dal as well and celebrating it, because even within, like, say, if you say soya, or you say udad, or you say rajma, within these umbrella species, there are so many different local species you can try as you travel around.
Yeah, in fact, one of the data points is India's total dal production. Chana makes almost 50% of that basket. And chana dal prices have been crashing, while tur dal, we are kind of going out to the world saying, okay, give it to us. So yesterday, in fact, chef was saying, okay, we also need to talk about substituting dal in recipes, etc. In fact, one of our earlier meetings at ICA, we talked about this. We said the production, the recipe writing, the brand, and the commercial kitchen, right now, they all operate in different silos, which probably kind of with a massive effort that was put in millet marketing, those silos were somehow talking to each other. Chef, where do you see yourself in this? What kind of support does who should lead it, and who should be contributing how, if we need to talk more seriously about that?
So like we were discussing, I think just this year was a year of millet and everyone was speaking about millet, and millet got a due respect. Though I think still it was not done properly because people know millet, but people don't know the different type of millet and how should be used. So that was a challenge. But I have a very strong feeling that ne next year or year next to that would be year of dals, year of pulses,
Yeah.
and it will get a due credit. Uh, like Ruchina mentioned, the the Eastern world is coming towards vegan, plant-based, mock meats. We don't need to think about, we are literally born with it. Your Bengal ka dokhar dalna or the Rajasthan cuisine आप पूरा उठा लो, it's besan based, it's gatta le lo, yogurt le lo, so all that thing is there. You have that Bengal, that chakki ka sabzi, your khandvi, all those are mock meats for us. So there is a lot of scope of that, and we need to tell world that you can try this. We can use these substitute for international cuisines also. It's not that it can be done in only Indian cuisine. The same basin cooked with yogurt, thickened, set in a tray like a barfi cut, and I can serve it with a creamy mushroom sauce too. And it will taste nice. I just need to add a herb. So it will be a great substitute to a chicken, or a we can substitute that in Asian gravies with your tofu, like Rushina mentioned, the Asian the gatta, the thing. We can look into various different versions, and Hamari cuisine is full of textures. There is no challenge in textures, flavors, all these things. The only thing is we need to tell people that this is not cheap. This is not, we are forcing you. This is worth having. Like this year, everyone went to millets. If we tell people that dal is good, dal can be substitute, the entire world will go towards dal. Uh, then it's also the thing is need. The farmers will grow when there is a need. The chana dal, because it was the well accepted dal. But now people are at home are moving to various dals. The consumption of chana dal in hotels have reduced drastically. So that's why the price might be crashing. I'm just thinking a little loud. I'm not pretty sure about it, but that could be a reason. Whereas your arar dal and moong dal, the prices, the consumption are increasing. So that could be the reason. So we need to develop a need for everything. So when the customers start demanding, we will start producing. And when I say we, I am representing chefs here. So we need that. The creativity, yes, there is things started like your it's been happening for a few years, though the growth is little slow. Like you are using these dals because of their texture in their vegetarian kebabs. Like you will find rajma ki galati or dal ki galati or XYZ. So it's happening, but the pace is slow. So the chefs need to take that we will curate, we will have better dishes, we will showcase to the entire world that dal can be consumed in many ways, can be cooked into many ways, but yet in a delicious way. It's not that forcefully, it's not a medicine, but it's a delicious thing. So that's part one. Now, but it cannot be only chef, because like I mentioned, when I'm working for someone, I'm not working for my passion. There are certain things I do for passion, but there are certain things I do for my living. So
Yeah.
when I'm doing a job, I'm doing for my living, and someone is giving me a salary, and he's giving me a salary because I'm giving him profit. So if there is no demand, if there is no need, I can't keep produce or I can't add. So there has to be a global movement. Everyone should join together, and then only it will happen. So we need support from government, we need support from agriculture, and a vice versa. The agriculture, the farmers also need support from us. But we need to ensure that whenever there is this kind of a movement, the prices go off the roof. Like the millet movement, what it was sold for 30, 40 rupees a kg, then it was
Yeah.
600 rupees a kg. So earlier we were not doing millets because there was no consumer. But later on, we are not able to do millets because it's unaffordable. It's not a business decision. So the balance is very important. And once it start, चाहे कोई भी start करे, it's the same thing. मैं अकेला ही चला था. लोग जुड़ते गए, काफिला बनता गया. So that will happen. But we need to start. And it will not happen by just having one conclave, one meeting, one trial. It has to be a constant effort. The effort cannot be कि हमने कर दिया अब हो जाएगा अपने आप. Nothing happens on its own. We need to push, 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 and it has to be done constantly.
Yes, chef. Agree. Uh, so Nitin and Alin, one question to both of you. I mean, I'll kind of, I want to chase this and dive deeper on with all the Indian diaspora, the size of Indian diaspora now, and all of them still want dal every day, right? So it can be a primary export commodity. It can be a revenue earner. That hasn't happened. right? We saw this year again why sowing has again gone down. So, Aline, I mean, as a commodity value chain, how do you see that? And Nitin, do you see the export market? I mean, for KisanSay, do you see that as a key market going forward?
So
Sorry, Nitin, yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. As far as India is concerned, I don't think demand is the problem. We have a supply side issue rather than a demand side issue from a commodity perspective. So as we talked about, why there is a supply side issue, you have to look at the production aspects, right? The why a farmer will grow something which is not necessarily a very highly remunerative from a market standpoint. Secondly, it comes down to pulses because, as I said, of the seed and the growing conditions, because most of the pulses are rabi crops. So that means no, unirrigated land area is what is being used. And that brings down to its productivity level. So automatically per unit return is a challenge. So he will grow something which is, he can't grow wheat there, or maybe something else we can't grow, so he will replace that. Talk about tour, right? The tour is a 9-month crop. I mean, so that means his cropping intensity maybe is only less than 100% in his field. So most of the Karnataka tour is, almost 30% is grown in hedges around his main crop. So a lot of these aspects you have to look at from an ecosystem standpoint. So supply side concerns are definitely there. Coming back to your issues of the issuing premium. Premium will only come from the consumption side of it. So, we have almost 8-9 types of pulses. Within that, for example, in Bengal, Sona Moong is already at a much higher premium than normal Moong dal.
Yeah.
Right? We Bengalis prefer. But you also have to see that that's a very niche market. That's a very small market. And that kind of a product lies in all commodities, from Alfonso's to Sona Masuri to Sona Moong, from Kashmiri Rajmas, from Munsheri, all these things exist. But that's very difficult to scale. If you want to pursue that line, that's perfectly all right. But if you want to commercialize and scale, that cannot happen. So when we talk about commodity, which has to be at a scale, which at least cater across 60-70% of the market, which is price conscious. Coming to that vegan theory, a couple of years back, we did a research study for using pulses for the vegan, because currently most of it is soya derivatives to create in plant-based protein. The science has not reached that level yet to isolate pulse protein to that extent to use. So there has been some work on the peas side of it, but they're still working on chana to get that. And India is, believe me when I say India is in the map, because we are the largest producer of chana. So India is in the map, but this science has to also have progress from the food side of it. The export side, government doesn't allow, because we are still supply short. It's banned, other than organic pulses. And maybe Kabuli chana, that's also organic pulses, which is allowed. Otherwise, no pulses are allowed to be, seed pulses are allowed to be exported. Derivative side of it, yes, maybe, but how much market? So farmers will grow if there is a demand. There are many examples I can cite, time is short, where the farmers will grow if there is a reasonable amount of demand coming from the market base or coming from the government through incentives or push. But he needs that initial confirmation, because at the end of the day, it is its livelihood we are talking about. So he has to have a reasonable confidence that jitna uga liya, I would be able to sell. We'll stop here, maybe give time to Nitin and then questions, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Om. So I think to your question, there is obviously a demand for tastier, healthier, better products every time, whether it's pulses, dals, rajmas, urad dal, and all the stories that we're talking of. And it's eventually a question of promoting your product, telling your story in a certain way. Now, if you look at another category, I'll give you an example of dry fruits, right? We import a lot of dry fruits into India. And it's a well-known fact that the amount of oil, fatty acid, which is there in a lot of these dry fruits in India is significantly higher than what you get from the imported varieties, and hence good cholesterol, etc., etc. The same thing applies here, to a lot of the the Chitra Rajma, what we call today, which was actually the ones that we are producing is now coming in, being imported. It's the same name, but the product is completely different. And if you go today to a consumer, you ask, "Aap kaun sa rajma khate?" We will say Chitra ya Lal. Now, Chitra and Lal is not a Rajma definition. It's the commodity trader's definition of Rajma. But Rajma is, as Rushina said, 20 types of Rajma. Chakrata ka hai, ki Munshari ka hai, ki yahan ka hai, ki wahan ka hai. But we've never spoken about it. We've never promoted it. We've never written about it. We've never painted this, big grand picture about it.
I
As a
think
result of it,
most of us don't even know that there is that much variety
correct.
available.
वही दो ही जानते हैं हम, चित्रा है कि लाल है, और वो राजमा नहीं होता है. I mean, that's a trader's terminology.
And difference is also huge.
करेक्ट. तो वो जब ज्यादा लोगों को पता चलेगा, जो अलीन भी यही कह रहे थे, he was saying, it's all ultimately economics, demand and supply. Whenever there is an imbalance, either on the positive or the negative, vice versa, उसका फिर reaction होगा. तो जब डिमांड बढ़ेगी, लोगों को पता चलेगा, कंज्यूम करेंगे, सप्लाई अपने आप बढ़ेगा. जब सप्लाई बढ़ेगा तो कोई चीज अगर महंगी है, if there is a price differential of 50% over a period of time, maybe it will take 3 years, 4 years, it may not take one cycle but 4 or 5 cycles, वो differential शायद 20% हो जाएगा. So the same storytelling जो chef भी कह रहे थे, the same storytelling that we've done for millets needs to be now told, about pulses and the great, grand, good pulses grown in various agroclimatic zones, and how it's good for people, how it's good for planet, how it's good for farmers. That story is obviously also there, the nitrogen fixation and the other things which Rushina was also mentioning. तो वो हमने कभी किया नहीं है, all these years we've gone the easy route of there is a demand or a deficit of pulses, so let's import. We've done these quick fixes. We've not gone the long-term strategic route, thinking of 10 years hence, 20 years hence, what is going to happen, right? The same thing happened with edible oils. There was a point in time when India was surplus in edible oils. But the kind of policies that we had and the kind of trade tariff policies that we implemented, ultimately ये हो गया कि आधा तेल हम फिर से import कर रहे हैं, worth tens of billions of dollars. So it's bad economics, not so good for health also maybe sometimes, because all the traditional oils have gone away. वही story यहाँ पे भी है. Good talking of it from a good business point of view, and talking of it from a culture and a sustainability and a health and a nutrition trade point of view are totally different. But using the power of marketing, using the power of communication, using the power of writing with experts like Chef, Rushina, all of us here, we could, create a small little maybe drop in the ocean, और फिर बूंद बूंद से सागर बन जाएगा.
That's the idea. कि session से start होगा, but then all of us can probably do something together, take this forward. I mean, not just end this with just a online session. So there are
Just incidentally, on 25th is Dal Divas.
Okay. We didn't even know it. So that's
So it's something I've been pushing for a few years now, the Indian Food Observance Days, where I picked up 10 concepts that are very intrinsic to Indian cuisine, and we celebrate the diversity. So this year I don't have any plans, but each year we've tried to do something to build awareness. Basically, just even something as simple as cooking a dal and telling its story on social media, to show the variety and diversity and learn from each other. And Chef Bhasin has actually been really supportive of all my craziness with these days. So we've cooked up some really interesting historical royal kitchen dals and stuff like that in the past.
Fantastic. तो परसों हमें पहाड़ों की उड़द दाल और जोशीमठ और मशारी राजमा बनाना चाहिए.
हाँ? By all means.
Okay, so there are no questions in the chat room, but if any of you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, ask it, or type it in the chat. If not, we have 4 minutes. We'll probably finish. Yeah.
While we're waiting for questions, I'd like to just add one more thing. I think all of us, what we need to start doing is stop taking dal for granted. We need to stop treating it as a pedestrian thing. I think one of the reasons why it doesn't get its due is because we all think that वही ना घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर वाले scenes. So if we start looking at our own traditional dals in a different perspective. I think that'll be very helpful. Whatever I am seeing in the Godrej Food Trends Report next edition, provenance is going to be a big thing. We are definitely reconnecting with where our ingredients are coming from. And I think that this whole dal conversation can very much add to that, because it's giving you mindful nutrition. It's good for the ecosystem. It can be really cool if you just look at it slightly differently.
Yes. Thank you, Rushina. Okay, there is Anirudh, this is also our first one. We'll probably have one per month in the culture and agriculture series, but there are others in the ICA team which are hosting other events. So follow us on any social media channel, check our website, you'll get to know the list ones.
Sometimes for the dal to promote, the culinary aspect definitely becomes a humongous important thing. I'm just currently reading a book called Salt, Sugar, and so of fat. And if you read that how the whole marketing system has changed, if you tweak these three aspects in any of the diet. And so I think even during the millet promotion, I have been talking about in some of the workshops that if you do not factor into the taste part of it, right? And don't create that dopamine and endorphin out there when you eat, you don't get attract to that particular food. So I think the chefs have a humongous amount of role in that aspect.
So any last words? We have 2 minutes.
Nothing much. Just I would say that this is not a responsibility of one person. This is not a responsibility of any chef or a writer, of a farmer or a journalist. I think this has to be a collaborative responsibility, because like dal, millets are also, oh, sorry, like millets, dal is also a very essential part of our cuisine. By doing justice to dal, we are not doing justice only to the dal, but also to our cuisine, to the Indian culture, to our history, to our heritage. So let's all work together and make it big. Tell the world what it is, what unique ingredient we have, and what all varieties we have. So just not it be a
Yeah.
theoretical session, or and let's do a detailed one. Like I mentioned about the millets. Personally, I might be wrong, but I have a personal that the millets, we have all gone and promoted millets, but it's not a success because we have told people what is millet, but we haven't told them how to consume millets, or what are the different kinds of millets, or which are the rice substitute, which are the wheat substitute. So this time let's do a little better job in an organized manner where people are able to understand, absorb, and take it forward. Because what was happened was millet, they had no idea how to consume. They
Yeah.
just consumed it randomly, and then body was not able to accept it. It gave it back, and we stopped consuming millet. That it's not meant for me. My body is not accepting. It's not that body is not accepting because we didn't have it the right way. So let's put it a very structural approach. And there is no way we can fail with dal if we do that. That's my thought.
And I feel that it would be nice if there could be more research put into dal into consumption patterns, because I feel what we did not do when we talked about millets is we didn't look at how millets are consumed traditionally. If you look at that, you'll
Absolutely.
see there's a seasonal consumption of grains. Millets, like say for example in Uttarakhand, mandwa is eaten in the winter. Now suddenly, because we were promoting millets, people were eating them at every meal in every possible form, and then that is, it's pulling it out of context, and obviously then your body is not going to accept it. So I feel research to ratify these traditional practices, nutritive benefits. There's so much mixed information. A lot of it comes from the West that says don't eat like this or don't eat like that, but that's not necessarily what the Indian system needs, what the Indian human body needs. So I think from one, yes, policy, and government level moves like the whole millet movement, it gave national attention to a category of food. But with information ratified by modern science and research, telling you that yes, dal and rice consumption together is scientifically proven to be complete amino acids, is these dal should be eaten like this. If you look at tradition, like in the Gujarati kitchen, for example, there is a rotational consumption of dal. You don't eat only one dal. You eat a different dal every day in combination with different things. This information needs to be packaged up along with that product or commodity that you're packaging up, so that the consumer is getting the full information and consuming it in the right form, in the right way, so that, I mean, like that keto diet that was popular a couple of years ago actually caused a lot of medical issues, because suddenly you were eating so much protein that your system couldn't handle.
No, our body is like a machine. It can do certain things in a certain manner. It can digest, it can process. So we need to. And like Indian cuisine, mein, the best part is our cuisine. If we go by what we were consuming, the pattern we were consuming, we don't need to think much because our cuisine is anyway around Ayurveda. It's about the, I I don't know who did the research or what, but it's perfect. If you go by the
Yeah.
weather, that the way our
This,
ancestors were eating, that's a perfect way. And
the
one
functional
thing is,
aspect
we
of
should not go the
ingredient
millet route of
combination.
only like promoting millet. It has to be specific dal. It should not be a dal, dal, dal. It has to be moong dal, masoor dal, arar dal. We need to go specific. We should not say just consume dal or use dal for this recipe because
And
then there
more,
would be mismatch.
more and more, there is a lot of scientific research that's saying we need to eat what our ancestors ate. So if say, for example, in Gujarat, if my ancestors ate a certain way and suddenly I have moved to the north and I'm eating like a whole lot of whole pulses, that might not work for my system as well.
So
Uh,
another thing is the target audience. I mean, I know the time is, I think, maybe that up is looking at the next 10, 15 years, the eating habit of the younger generation who are going to be the consumer for your next 25 years needs to be looked into. And nobody promoted momos, right? But every street corner you find them. So you have to take cues from there, that why and how, whether it's pocket friendly, easy to accept, whether what it does from your nutritional standpoint is completely out of the window. It also actually has bit the boiled andas which you get at the roadside. So when we promote anything, you need to understand these aspects as well, because unless and until there is a right market at the right price point, at the right taste point, it doesn't work.
Logistics.
Uh,
One very important thing is logistics, which we overlook. Like why on all hilly areas you will find Maggie? Why this egg thing which you mentioned? Because anda rakhna and you just need a boiling water. So these are all logistic things. For
But
a
but
momos, what you
Ashish,
need a
yeah,
momos.
that's
but
convenience.
so I was recently in Kashmir and I was very interested to see that two primary street foods in Kashmir are driven by dal. There's varibot, which is like soya bean cooked and it's tossed with spices and things like that. So the basic street food in Kashmir is dal, and there is a masala chot, which is like a bread which is spread with mashed chickpeas or something, and some kachumbar and chutney. So it's also about the stories we are telling and what we
It's
are
not
pulling out.
only Kashmir. You go pan India. Your vadas, your pakoras, your dal badas, your Rajasthani thing, even a kachori is stuffed with dal. So India, dal is like a synonym to us. Which home meal is have we consume without like I don't remember a meal in my home without a dal any day. So dal is a must. Dal, rajma, chole, curry, all this. There has to be one preparation of this.
guys,
But what
happy
has happened?
happy to
Comfort
be
is only
the
comfort.
no, happy to be the host that nobody has left the meeting and has still run over time. So, but people eventually judge you if you speak beyond the allotted time. We said 1 hour.
Yeah.
If we take people's time more than an hour, they'll eventually judge us. So what
Yeah.
I'll do is we'll repurpose this video, put it on YouTube, try to bring out blogs and short videos, etc. Kind of make the information shared here more accessible. Probably do a dal part 2 if that is audience interest. But for this session, Thanks to all of you. I don't think, I could have had a better first session. But thank you, Rushina. Thank you, Aline, Nitin, and Ashish Bhasin.
Thank
We'll
you.
meet again to do something around dal proli, not just talk.
Thanks for having us. Otherwise, it will become abol tabol as it says in your background.
Thanks for noticing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.